Okay, hello everyone. Hello to our honorary lecturer, Sir Gatot. Today we would like to present our presentation about modeling on 5 types of qualitative research. Before we start our presentation, we would like to introduce ourselves. First, start from me. My name is Etna Gres as the moderator, and my friends.
My name is Ariani Syahbani.
And my name is Rahma Meisa.
So we'd like to start our presentation right now. First, let's take a look to the table of the content. We would like to tell about ethnographic research, narrative research, phenomenology, case study, and grounded theory. Ethnography research. Ethnographic research is a qualitative method where research observe and or interact with a study's participant in the real life environment. Here, I want to observe the situation that should be considered by every teacher to be practiced during classroom teaching and learning. That is about giving feedback. The title of this research is Advantage Giving Feedback for Students in Language Learning. Okay, so for the theory, feedback can lead to learning only if the student have opportunities to use it. One of the best ways you can help students learn to use feedback is to make sure you build in opportunities for students to use it fairly soon after they receive it. Feedback is effective if it feeds forwards, if it's used by the learner in improving performance. Actually, there is still debate in the field of formative assessment as to what constitutes formative does. The feedback have to change performance, or is it enough that the feedback could be used to change performance? To my mind, this distinction matters little when you are giving feedback to a student with the intention of feeding learning forward. If some positive consequence for learning does not ensure, then the feedback has void its purpose. It doesn't have to be cause for weeping and willing and just keep trying. Then, step of conducting the ethnographic research. First is about determine the idea, and then formulate the research question, determine the research location, determine the ethnographic research type, seek approval, conduct the ethnographic research, analyze the collected data, and the last is making conclusion. Let's take a look one by one. First, about determine the idea. What problem are you trying to solve? Try to think the topic of your research is the very first step. This time, I want to observe about how feedback can give advantage for students to develop their language learning skill. Teacher is the important role here. And then, formulate the research question. After determine the idea or the problem I would like to solve, next is formulate the research question. It is about what question do you want to answer for? And in here, I give an example. Why giving feedback is important? How can feedback change students' performance in learning? What the advantage of giving feedback? And then what the weakness of giving advantage for student? And then what can the teacher give the feedback for the student? Next, determine the research location. After knowing who the target audience is, and the question will ask them, then the next step is to figure out where we would have to conduct the ethnographic research. In this case, I will interview the student with 3 different levels. Those are in junior high school, senior high school, and also the college student as well. I will go to some school and university to observe. And then the fourth step is determine the ethnographic research site. Here are 3 types of ethnographic research method to choose from, which include passive observation, following the subject and observing them doing their regular activities without making an interaction. In here, the researcher may take notes, click photographs, or record video to draw observational inference. And then the next is contextual interview, following the subject and observing them doing their regular activities while also interacting with them. In here, the researcher may observe and interacting with the subject as well. And then the last method is archival research. The researcher digs down existing document and pass research for understanding the requirement. There is no physical contact with the subject in the case of archival research. In my case, I will go with the second type of ethnographic research type, that is contextual interview. I'm observing their activities in the class and also interacting with them. Okay, then the next 6 for approval. After all the initial requirements are in place, the next step is to seek approval from concerned officials. In my case, I will seek the approval from the headmaster, teacher, or maybe the rector as well to observe their student, also their teaching and learning activities in the classroom. Okay, the next is conduct the ethnographic research. This is the part of the process where we are in the live environment of our target audience and observe them as they perform their daily tasks. Conduct the research based on the chosen ethnographic method. Observe the subject and write down notes, take photographs, record interview, or create the videos. And then analyze the collected data. Analyze gathered information to create the final requirement analysis document with regard to user experience. At this stage, the researcher will organize all the collected document and data for further analysis. The first thing to understand here is to only write down and present the facts. It is not recommended to modify the research based on intuitions or your personal opinion, as it leads to biases. And then the last step is making a conclusion. After analyzing the collected data, we finally can get the answer for the question we've made earlier. Then the last step is making the conclusion. Okay, so technique of collecting the data and how I will collect the data. First, because I will go with the contextual interview method of ethnographic research, I will observe the student and teacher during their activities of teaching and learning. I will ask the teacher to make 2 situations in a different day. First situation during the teaching and learning, teacher give feedback to the students. And second situation is the teacher not giving any feedback for them. Through that, we can know the difference when teacher giving feedback and when they are not. And then the second, after observing, I will be giving a questionnaire in form of paper for the student related to the feedback during teaching and learning. The questions are around, do you think feedback is important? What do you feel the difference between teacher give feedback with teacher not giving feedback? Which situation do you prefer? I will also give the questionnaire to the teacher as well. The questions around, do you feel any difference when you're giving feedback to student or when you are not? Is there any performance change when you're giving feedback to the students? And then the last, beside questionnaire, I will take some sample students and teacher to ask these questions like a short interview. I'm asking and write down their answers so I can directly interact with them and directly hear their opinion. From those, of course, I will find pros and cons. So I will collect the data, then I will answer all my questions. Okay, next, the technique of data analysis. From the answer of questionnaire and from the interview as well, I will sort based on pros and cons related to the matter, giving feedback. Then also sort between students' answer and also the teacher's answer. Okay, the last is about write the technique of drawing the conclusion. I conclude my ethnography with a suitable conclusion text that sums up what I did and what I learned. I restate my main point about giving feedback so that the reader is left with the impact of my work and what it will mean in the overall study of that culture. Okay, for the next material will be presented by my friend Rahma Meisa. Rahma, time is yours.
All right, now it's my turn. Narrative research. Next slide, please. All right, the definition of narrative research. Narrative research is a research studying how different human beings experience in the world around them And now I want to observe about the experience of mental health during the pandemic. Next slide, please. All right, the title is The Pandemic Impact on Mental Health. Next slide. All right, background or theory. The coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 spread rapidly across the global community, prompting the World Health Organization to declare COVID-19 a global pandemic in March 2020. A key concern during the pandemic relates to the mental health of vulnerable population, including college students. Mental health is person condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being. The COVID-19 pandemic have caused a huge amount of fear and anxiety and certainty. A pandemic is not just a medical phenomenon. It affects individuals in society and causes disruption, anxiety, stress, stigma, and xenophobia. In this study, I will explore the sociological effect of the pandemic and its impact on the mental health well-being of the general population. Also, aim factors that contribute to mental distress in isolation, anxiety, and depression, suicide risk, and sleeping disorders. Next slide, please. All right. Step to conduct narrative research. There are seven commonly. First, identify a problem or phenomenon to explore. So I will identifying an issue or concerns provides the purpose for a study to understand personal or social experience of an individual. And next slide, please. And second, select one or more participants to study. Then I will select an individual who can provide an understanding of the issue. Next slide, please. Now, collect the story from the participants. Beside the participant verbally sharing their story through conversation or interviews, field text also provide information about the participants. For example, journal or diary entries, letters sent by the individuals, photographs, memory box, and stories acquired through friends or family members. Next slide, please. Fourth, restory or retell the individual story. These steps involves examining the raw data, identifying key elements, organizing, and sequencing these elements, and then retelling a story that describes the individual experience. Restoring helps the reader to understand the story by sequencing it in a logical order. Stories commonly include the following elements like setting, characters, problems, actions, and resolution. Next slide, please. All right. Collaborate with the participant or storyteller. Throughout the narrative story collection process, the researchers work with the storyteller to ensure the participants' experience are accurately portrayed. Next slide, please. Now, write a story about the participants' experience. Usually, the biggest step in narrative research, the participant life experience are written into a story by the researchers, highlighting specific themes that emerged throughout the story and involving a section about the importance of narrative research can be helpful to readers. Next slide, please. And the last is validate the report accuracy. An accurate report is essential to preserving the story, conferring with individuals, and searching for disconfirming evidence will protect the story credibility. All right, next slide, please. Now, techniques of collecting the data. So the data can be collected in many forms such as autobiographical writing, documents such as class plans and bulletins, and then journals, field notes, interview transcript, observations, storytelling, letter writing, pictures, metaphors, and personal philosophy. And first, so I will collect the data with using observation, documents, and interview. And second, to identify the phenomenon, I will give the questionnaire and interview to some students. The questionnaire and interview were asked about their mental health during pandemic. Third, I will analyze the data by making the sense of whole data with examining the narrative frame, narrative empty box, and non-narrative data from interview transcription. And then identify the element of the story and articulate into a logic order, starting with past, present, and future. And then the data from narrative frame and narrative empty box were combined by adding familiar points from narrative empty box to narrative frame. And after that, after combine was done, the researchers find any familiar and elaborate story from interview transcription to be compiled in the narrative frame. And then I will start to closely work with the participant in collecting narrative. The participants had to understand well what story to tell. And the last reported finding by using thematic analysis. The finding section is divided into a number of subsections representing the main themes that result from the analysis of the data. Next slide, please. All right, this is the plain technique of data analysis. So data obtained from observation, documentation, and interview were analyzed using reduction, triangulation, and verification steps. The result of interviews and observation are reduced. Next slide, please. Now the technique of drawing the conclusion. So I conclude brief statement of the main points. It doesn't mean I write the whole story throughout the essay. This would be redundant and deflect from my message. Instead, remind readers of a few of the important events and insight from the research. Next slide, please. All right, now the third types of qualitative research is phenomenology research. Next slide, please. So, the definition of phenomenology research. Phenomenology is an approach in which research makes observation of participants to reveal concepts or phenomena of experience that occur in the life of the participants. Next slide, please. So, the title is the use of smartphone as learning media for young children. Next slide, please. All right, the theory. Every day, the use of technology in the classroom grows in popularity. It has allowed teachers to convey more knowledge in a shorter amount of time than was previously possible. Although technology through media and technological gadgets has helped children obtain great amounts of knowledge, though there are certain negative aspects that should not be neglected. Introducing technology to children at young age can have adverse effects in their personal life, their relationship with others, and their health in the future. It can also lead children to social isolation and give rise to others. Serious physical and mental diseases such as obesity, obesity, computer vision syndrome, and depression. Next slide, please. Now, steps of conducting the phenomenology research. There are four. First, bracketing. This is the process where preconceived beliefs and opinions concerning the phenomenon research are identified and held in abeyance. Second, instituting. After bracketing out is done, institution follows where the research remains focused on the attribute meaning of the phenomenon by the preceded research. And then analyzing. After accomplishing the institution process, the analysis is the next step. In this process, coding is done where categorizing and making sense of the significant meaning of the phenomenon is created. And then describing. The critical step of any phenomenological research methodology is the description. In the description stage, this is where comprehension and definition of the phenomenon are done by the researchers. All right, next slide, please. Now, techniques of collecting the data. First, collect the data that is involves interviewing individuals, collecting documents, pictures, and observation. And second, data analysis can follow systematic procedure that move from narrow units of analysis and onto broader units such as thematic analysis. Third, data analysis involves highlighting important statement of respondent that is called horizontalization. And next, develops cluster of meaning. Then write report findings called textual description. And then we should add context or setting. And this step is called structural description. And then write a composite report with textual and structural. And the last, the study ends with a descriptive passage regarding the essence of the lived experience. Next slide, please. All right. The techniques of data analysis. The phenomenological interview begins with a social conversation or a brief meditative activity aimed at creating a relaxed and trusting atmosphere. Following this opening, the researchers take a few moments to focus on the experience, moment of particular awareness and impact, and then to describe the experience fully. The interviewer is responsible for creating a climate in which the research participant will feel comfortable and will respond honestly and comprehensively. Next slide, please. All right, the technique of drawing the conclusion. So I will highlighting key points in the analysis and then demonstrating the importance of idea and introducing possible new or expanded ways of thinking about the research problem. This doesn't refer to introducing new information, but to offer new insight and creative approach for framing or contextualizing the research problem based on the result of the study. All right, that's all from me. The next presenter is Ariani Syahbani.
Okay, thank you, Amma, for the opportunity. Next, I will explain about case study and grounded theory. Okay, the definition of case study is case study used to gather in-depth and detailed information about a subject, which could be any entity, organization, event, or something larger like a country. The nature of this qualitative research method can be explanatory. Next slide, please. The title of case study is the use of storytelling in teaching English. Next slide, please. The theories is about listening is the potential wherein humans use their experience of hearing to pay attention and realize what the speaker means. The system that consists of hearing and comprehending message conveyed with the aid of the speakers. This is according to Brownell, and the pastime of processing the records we got from the speakers. This is according from Underwood. This is called listening comprehension, and one of the records we got, and one of the new techniques teachers can make use of in supporting pupils' beauty, their listening abilities in digital storytelling. Virtual storytelling has come to light over the last years as a beneficial coaching and the coaching style. It has substantially high-quality effect on motivating the learner to participate within the teaching, gaining knowledge of process separately, which leads to intensity content. The newness inside the fashion of presentation lets in the learners to specific the expertise they knew already and integrate it into the content material in greater severe interactive and devoted way. Digital storytelling defines as a set of the author's testimonies that work with a digital mediator or CD with the aid of adding a few strategies associated with sound, image, color, and animated photos and musical outcomes. This memorized really upon occasions, narration, and storytelling. Characters and drama lines and the climax, as well as the placing and the ethical. All of the preceding elements make language acquisition and placing instructional enjoy. Okay, next slide, please. Next is about steps to conduct case study research. First is select a case, and second is build a theoretical framework, and the third is collect your data, and the last is describe and analyze the case. Okay, next slide, please. Step 1 is select a case. Once you have developed your problem statements and research question, you should be ready to choose the specific case that you want to focus on. A good case study should have the potential to first is provide new or unexpected insights into the new subject and challenge or complicate existing assumption about the theories. And the third is propose practical courses of action to resolve a problem. And the last is open up new direction for future research. Unlike quantitative or experimental research, a strong case study doesn't need to require a random or representative sample. In fact, case studies often deliberately focus on unusual, neglected, or outlying cases which may shed new light on the research problem. Next slide, please. Step 2 is build a theoretical framework. While case studies focus more on concrete details than general theories, they should usually have some connection with theory in a field. This way, the case study is not just an isolated description, but is integrated into existing knowledge about the topic. It might aim to first exemplify. This is about a theory by showing how it explains the case under investigation. And the second is expand on a theory by uncovering new concepts and ideas that need to be incorporated. And the last is challenge, a theory by exploring an outlier case that doesn't fit with established assumptions. To ensure that your analysis analysis of the case has a solid academic grounding, you should conduct a literature review of source data related to the topic and develop a theoretical framework. This means identifying key concepts and theories to guide your analysis and interpretation. Next slide, please. Okay, step 3 is about collect the data. There are many different research methods you can use to collect data on your subject. Case studies tend to focus on qualitative data using methods such as interviews, observation, and analysis of primary and secondary choice. For the example, newspaper articles, photographs, official records. And sometimes a case study will also collect quantitative data. Next slide, please. Step 4 is about describe and analyze the case. In writing out the case study, you need to bring together all the relevant aspects to give as complete as a picture as possible of the subject. How you report your finding depends on the type of research you are doing, and some case studies are structured like a standard scientific paper or thesis, with several sections or chapters for the methods, results, and discussion. Others are written in a more narrative styles, aiming to explore the case from various angles and analyze its meaning and implication. For the example, by using textual analysis or discourse analysis. In all cases, though, make sure to give contextual details about the case, connect it back to the literature and theory, and discuss how it fits into wider patterns or debates. Next slide, please. Okay, the next slide is about techniques of collecting data and how. In case study research, the data collected are usually qualitative, or words, meanings, and views, but can also be quantitative, descriptive numbers and tables. Qualitative data analysis may be used in theory building and theory testing. So first, I will interview the students and the teacher. I will ask about how is the use of storytelling in learning and the teaching process. Okay, next I will do the observations. The teacher will do the storytelling activities in the class and see if the use of this activity improves the student ability in listening or not. Okay, and then next is questionnaire. I will ask the teacher, can storytelling activities improve the students' abilities in listening? And I will search the relevant document about how storytelling in teaching listening. Next slide, please. The techniques of data analysis. From the interview, observation, questionnaire, and relevant document about the storytelling in teaching English, I will choose the relevant data for my analysis. And next slide, please. It's about write the technique of drawing the conclusion. I conclude the case study with a conclusion and summarize the data that I learned. I will write again the main points of storytelling in listening class. Next slide, please. Next is about grounded theory. Next slide, please. Grounded theory. Start with the collecting data. In order to answer a particular question, we use that data that includes the similar concept in each category. We use that data set in order to think about what series emerge from that and support that data. Next slide, please. The title of grounded theory that I choose is University as Learning Organization. The next slide, please. The theories of this grounded theory is the position of better training institution no longer only acts as an automobile totally educational method, but need to additionally grow to be a learning company. According to Wibowo, learning organization are organizations that proactively create, acquire, and transfer knowledge and which change their behavior based on new knowledge and insights. On the other words, a learning organization is an organization that builds the capacity to adapt and change continuously. Organizational mastering refers to tactics and activities via which an employer learns at the same time as getting to know organization is the organizational form described via the capacity to analyze and consequences of learning. As to start with concept through getting to know business, enterprise has a strongly humanist orientation. Being an area in which people usually make bigger, the capacity to create the result they absolutely preference, where new and expensive patterns and questioning are nurtured, wherein collective aspiration is about free and in which humans are continually getting to know the way to analyze together. Next slide, please. Okay, steps of conducting research. First is determine initial research question, and the second is recruit and collect data. This is about theoretical sampling, and the third is break transcript into excerpts, or is about open coding, and group excerpts into codes, and also about open coding. And group codes into categories is about Excel coding, and analyze more excerpts and compare with codes. And the next is repeat steps 2 until 6 until you reach theoretical saturation. And the next is define the central idea or selective coding. And the last is write your grounded theory. Next slide, please. The techniques of collecting data and how. In grounded theory research, the data collected from interviewing participants with open-ended questions. So I will interview the participant and ask them about university as learning organization in their campus. Next, I will do the participant observation. I will observe the organization in a university. And last, I will be collecting the document about organization in the university. And next slide, please. The techniques of data analysis. From the interview and participant observation, I will systematically analyze and collected the data. Next slide, please. The technique of drawing the conclusion. I will conclude the grounded theory with the data that I already collected, and also I will write again the main points in my analysis. Okay, I think that's all. For the next instruction, back to moderator, Etna Gres.
All right, thank you everyone. For my friends already present the material. So that's all of our presentation. Thank you for paying attention and see you in the next time.